My girlfriend left me, found a new boyfriend, he left her, so she came back, but I didn't forgive her. I'd been with Jenna for 2 years. We met through a friend at a barbecue, and things worked for a while. She moved into my place a year in because she lost her job and couldn't pay rent. I thought it'd help us, but it didn't. She'd spend her days on her phone or with friends while I worked my insurance job. I'd come home to her complaining about being bored. The breakup came 6 months ago on a Tuesday night. She showed up at my apartment, sat on the couch, and said it was over. She blamed me, said I didn't go out enough, didn't make her feel special. I didn't argue. She grabbed her stuff, left her key, and walked out. I locked the door and went to bed. I deleted her number after that and moved on. After Jenna dumped me, I didn't hear from her for weeks. I kept my head down, stuck to my routine, work, gym, gaming. I didn't check her socials or ask anyone about her. Figured she was out of my life for good. Then one of my buddies, Mike, mentioned he'd seen her at a club downtown. Said she was all over some dude, laughing and dancing like she didn't have a care in the world. I nodded and changed the subject. Didn't need the details. But Mike kept talking, said the guy looked like some wannabe DJ type, all tattoos and chains. I didn't ask more, but I could picture it. That was Jenna's scene, not mine. Weeks turned into months, and word got around she'd shacked up with this new guy. Her friends were posting pics online, Jenna and him at bars, at the beach, in some cheap motel room. She looked happy, or at least she was selling it hard. I didn't care enough to dig into it. My life was fine without her. I'd started a new project at work, picked up extra hours, and was saving for a new PC build. Kept me busy. Meanwhile, she was out there doing her thing. Mutual friends said she'd talk about how much better this guy was than me, more fun, more exciting. Said she'd upgraded. I didn't lose sleep over it. She could say what she wanted. The club scene was her playground after we split. Mike and a couple other guys I knew would see her almost every weekend, different spots, same vibe. She'd be there with her girls or this DJ boyfriend, always in the middle of the crowd. One time, Mike said she'd asked about me, wanted to know if I was seeing anyone. He told her I was just doing my thing, nothing new. She didn't push it, just smirked and went back to her night. I didn't get why she'd even care. She made her choice, blamed me for it, and bounced. Whatever she was fishing for, I wasn't biting. Her new relationship didn't stay quiet. She'd post about it nonstop, him spinning at some dive bar, them getting late-night tacos, her gushing about how he got her. Her friends ate it up, hyping her in the comments. I only knew because my cousin scrolled past it one day and showed me. I glanced at it, shrugged, and handed his phone back. Didn't mean anything to me. She was living her life, and I was living mine. If she thought this guy was her big win, good for her. I wasn't keeping score. By month 5, I'd all but forgotten her. Work was steady, gym gains were solid, and I'd even started talking to a girl from my office. Nothing serious, just coffee once. Jenna was a memory I didn't touch. Whatever she was up to, it wasn't my problem anymore. She'd wanted out, and I'd let her go. Jenna's new relationship didn't hold up long. 7 months after she left me, Mike told me her DJ boyfriend had ended things. He said he'd seen them arguing outside a club one night, her raising her voice, him walking off. The guy didn't stick around after that. Word was he'd started seeing someone else, a bartender, and told Jenna it was over. She didn't handle it well. Mike said she'd been texting him nonstop and showing up where he worked, but he shut her out and moved on. She didn't have a stable place to go after that. When we were together, she'd lived with me because she couldn't keep a job. With this guy gone, she was back to square one. Mutual friends said she stayed with one of her friends for a bit, but it didn't last, something about her not helping with rent again. Her options were limited. I didn't know everything and didn't care to. She was just drifting, trying to find her next step. That's all I heard. Her social media went silent for a while after the split. No more posts about nights out or him at his gigs. She'd made a big deal about that relationship online, and now it was over. Friends said she was embarrassed. Didn't want to admit it fell apart after all the hype she'd built up. She told everyone he was perfect, a step up from me. Now she had nothing to show. My cousin mentioned she'd stopped posting for a couple weeks. She didn't seem to know how to handle it. I was still living my life when this happened. Work was going well, I'd gotten a small raise, and I was spending more time at the gym. The girl from my office and I had gone out a few more times, keeping it light. Things were good. Jenna's situation didn't cross my mind unless someone mentioned it. Mike kept me updated, said she'd started asking about me again, casually bringing me up to mutual friends. Wanted to know if I'd moved on or was still solo. I told Mike I didn't care what she found out. She'd made her choice. It wasn't shocking she'd lost this guy. She always chased the next big thing, nights out, attention, someone to boost her up. When it didn't work, she had no plan. I'd been her plan once, and she'd walked away. Now she was on her own, and I wasn't worried about it. She'd sort it out or she wouldn't. It didn't change my day. About 8 months after Jenna left me, she turned up at my door unannounced. It was a Saturday afternoon, and I'd just gotten back from the gym. I was in the middle of making a sandwich when the doorbell rang. I opened it, and there she was, hair messy, eyes red, carrying a duffel bag. She didn't call ahead, didn't text, just showed up like nothing had happened. I stood there, hand on the door, not saying a word. She started talking fast, said she'd made a mistake, that she was sorry for everything. Said she wanted us to work things out, to go back to how it was. I didn't move. Just looked at her. She told me the DJ guy had left her weeks ago, that she'd been crashing with friends but couldn't stay anywhere long. Said she'd been thinking about me, how I'd always been good to her, how she'd messed up by leaving. She brought up old times, nights we'd spent watching movies, how I'd paid the bills when she couldn't. Said she realized now what she'd thrown away. Her voice was shaky, like she'd been crying before she got there. I didn't feel anything. No anger, no pity, just nothing. She stood on my doorstep, waiting for me to let her in, but I didn't step aside. I'd spent the last 8 months building my life back up. Work was solid. I'd taken on more hours and was up for a promotion. The gym was paying off. I was stronger than I'd ever been. That girl from the office, Sarah, and I had been hanging out more, grabbing coffee, seeing movies. It wasn't serious, but it was easy. Jenna hadn't crossed my mind in weeks. I deleted her from my head the way I deleted her number. Now here she was, acting like she could walk back in and pick up where we left off. I wasn't buying it. She kept going, saying she'd changed, that she'd learned her lesson. Said the DJ guy was a mistake, that he'd used her and ditched her when someone new came along. She told me she'd been out of options, that she didn't know where else to go. Her friends were done with her, she'd burned those bridges by not pitching in. She didn't have a job, hadn't found one since the retail gig she lost before we broke up. I listened, but it didn't move me. She'd blamed me for everything when she left, said I wasn't enough. Now she was here because she had nothing left. I told her no. Said I wasn't doing this again. She looked shocked, like she'd expected me to cave. I didn't yell, didn't argue, just said she needed to leave. She stood there, bag in hand, eyes wide, like she couldn't believe it. I didn't owe her anything. Not after how she'd walked out. She'd made her choice, and I'd made mine. After I told Jenna no, she didn't walk away like I expected. She dropped her duffel bag on the doorstep and sat down right there, leaning against the doorframe. I told her again to leave, but she wouldn't budge. Said she had nowhere else to go, that she couldn't keep crashing on couches. Her voice got louder, pleading. She said she'd do anything to fix things, that she'd been wrong to blame me, that she'd take any chance I'd give her. I stood in the doorway, arms crossed, waiting for her to get the hint. She didn't. She stayed there for over an hour. Kept talking, repeating herself, how she'd screwed up, how the DJ guy had wrecked her, how she'd realized I was the only one who'd ever stuck by her. She brought up stuff from years ago, like when I'd driven her to a friend's place in the middle of the night because she was too drunk to get home. Said she didn't appreciate me then, but she did now. I didn't respond. Just let her ramble. Neighbors started poking their heads out, glancing over from their yards. I could tell they were curious, but I didn't care. I wasn't letting her in. Eventually, she switched tactics. Started crying, loud, messy sobs. Said she was sorry over and over, that she'd change, that she'd get a job this time, help with rent, whatever I wanted. She grabbed at my leg once, trying to hold on, but I stepped back. Told her she needed to go, that this wasn't my problem anymore. She acted like she didn't hear me. Kept sitting there, wiping her face, saying she'd wait until I changed my mind. I wasn't changing it. I'd spent months getting past her, and I wasn't about to undo that. I went inside after a while, locked the door, and left her out there. Could hear her through the walls, crying, then quiet, then knocking every few minutes. I turned on the TV to drown it out. Checked my phone, had a text from Sarah asking if I was free later. I said yeah, figured I'd head out soon. Jenna was still at it when I peeked through the window. She'd pulled out her phone, typing something, probably texting one of her friends. Didn't matter to me. I wasn't her lifeline anymore. She stayed until it got dark. I didn't check on her again, just kept my night going. Made dinner, played some games, texted Sarah back about meeting up. Around 9 p.m., I looked out, and she was gone. Bag and all. No note, no message, just an empty doorstep. I figured she'd found somewhere else to crash. Or maybe she hadn't. Either way, I slept fine that night. She wasn't my burden to carry. A few days after Jenna finally left my doorstep, I started hearing about her again, this time through her social media. She'd gone full-on pity party mode. My cousin showed me her posts. She'd put up long rants about being abandoned and betrayed. Said she'd been left with nothing, that everyone she trusted had turned their backs on her. Didn't name me outright, but it was obvious who she meant. She wrote about how she tried to make things right with someone, only to get rejected. Painted herself as this broken person just looking for a second chance. I scrolled through it once at my cousin's place, then handed his phone back. Didn't care enough to keep up with it. Her friends jumped in fast. They were all over her posts, leaving comments about how strong she was, how she didn't deserve this, how some people were just heartless. A couple of them I recognized from when we were together, girls she'd go clubbing with. They'd never liked me much, thought I was too quiet, too boring for her. Now they were eating up her story, piling on with stuff like, "You're better off," and "He doesn't know what he lost." I didn't lose anything. She'd walked out on me, not the other way around. But she'd flipped it, made it sound like I'd kicked her when she was down. She kept the posts coming over the next week. More vague shots, stuff about how she'd been used and thrown away. How she was starting over with nothing. Uploaded a pic of herself sitting on a park bench, looking sad, captioned it something about being alone now. Her followers were all in, hyping her up, saying she'd get through it. A few mutual friends reached out to me after that, asking what happened. I told them the truth. She showed up, I said no, she left. They didn't push it, but I could tell some of them bought her version. Didn't matter to me what they thought. I stayed off socials myself. Didn't post, didn't comment, just kept living my life. Work was busy with the promotion stuff, and I'd started training harder at the gym. Sarah and I were still hanging out. She'd come over once to watch a movie, and we'd gone out for drinks another night. Kept things simple. Jenna's drama didn't touch any of that. Mike said she'd asked him about me again, wanted to know if I was seeing someone. He told her he didn't know, which was half true. I hadn't told him much about Sarah. Didn't need Jenna sniffing around. Her victim act didn't surprise me. She'd always been good at getting people on her side, spinning stories, playing up the tears. She'd done it with her friends when we were together, complaining about me to anyone who'd listen. Now she was just louder about it. I wasn't playing along. Jenna's social media campaign kept going for a couple weeks, but I didn't pay it much attention. My cousin updated me once or twice. She'd posted more sob stories, got more likes from her friends, same routine. I didn't check it myself. Had better things to do. Work was picking up. I got the promotion I'd been gunning for, a bump in pay and a new title. Meant longer hours, but I didn't mind. Kept me focused. The gym was steady too. I'd hit a new personal record on my lifts, which felt good. Sarah and I were still seeing each other, nothing official, just hanging out when we could. Life was moving forward. Mike said Jenna had stopped asking about me after a while. Guess she figured out I wasn't biting. He'd seen her at a bar once, sitting with a couple of her old crew, but she didn't look like her usual self, no big smiles, no posing for pics. Said she seemed off, quieter. I didn't ask for more. Whatever she was up to, it didn't change my day. Mutual friends stopped bringing her up too, either they got tired of her posts or they didn't want to bug me about it. Worked for me either way. I heard through the grapevine she'd found a new place to stay. One of her club friends had a spare room, and she'd moved in there. Didn't know if she was paying rent or just coasting again, didn't care. She still didn't have a job far as I knew. Someone said she talked about waitressing again, but nothing came of it. Her posts slowed down eventually, fewer rants, more random pics of her out with people. Still played the sad angle sometimes, but it wasn't as loud. Her friends kept propping her up though. Guess they liked the drama. Me, I stayed in my lane. Sarah came over more, cooked dinner at my place one night, stayed late talking. We'd been out a handful of times now, bars and coffee shops mostly. She was chill, didn't push for anything heavy, which I liked. Work kept me busy enough that I didn't have time to dwell on old stuff. Jenna was just noise in the background, fading out. I didn't hate her, didn't wish her anything bad, just didn't want her in my space. She'd had her shot and blew it. One night, I was scrolling through my phone, nothing big, just killing time, and saw a random post from one of her friends pop up. Something about Jenna, finding herself, again. Had a pic of her smiling, first one in a while. I swiped past it. Didn't mean anything to me. My life was good, steady job, solid routine, someone new to hang with. Jenna could do whatever she wanted out there. I was done looking back. It's been almost a year since Jenna left, and things have settled. I don't hear much about her anymore. Her name doesn't come up unless someone's reminiscing about old times. Last I knew, she was still living with that friend, bouncing between odd jobs. Mike said he saw her working a shift at a diner a few weeks back, but she didn't stick around long. Quit after a month, same pattern as always. Her social media's gone back to what it used to be, pics of nights out, her with her girls, acting like nothing's wrong. The victim post stopped a while ago. Guess she got tired of that story when it didn't pull me back in. I'm in a different place now. The promotion at work stuck, I'm handling bigger accounts, pulling in more cash. Bought that new PC I'd been saving for, built it myself over a weekend. Gym's still a constant, I'm stronger than I was when she left, and it shows. Sarah and I kept things going. We're not rushing into anything, but she's over most weekends now. Cooked me dinner last night, stayed over. It's easy with her, no drama, no games. Feels like how it should have been all along. Jenna showing up that day didn't change anything for me. She begged, she cried, she tried to guilt me into taking her back, but I'd already moved on. She'd blamed me for everything when she walked out, then flipped it when her new guy bailed. I wasn't her fallback plan. Kicking her out was the right call, locked that door for good. Her friends can sympathize all they want, by her sob stories, whatever. Doesn't touch me. She made her choices, and I made mine. Looking back, the whole thing feels like a blip. 2 years with her, a year without, none of it owns me now. She's out there doing her thing, chasing whatever's next, and I'm here, solid. Work's good, Sarah's good, I'm good. That's where it ends. No regrets, no second guessing. She left, found someone else, lost him, came crawling back. I didn't forgive her, didn't need to. Life's too short for that noise.